Hey, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully, we're having a wonderful start to the week out there, and we do have some active weather to talk about, including some snowfall here right before Christmas, really going to add to those festive vibes for many folks here in portions of the country. And then I think once we get after Christmas, we're going to kind of see two major pattern changes. One from the time period from Christmas to New Year's, and then for the first bit of 2025, another pattern change that is going to really shake things up. I think it's that one that is going to once again return the big time cold and potentially big time snow through portions of the eastern half of the United States. We're going to break all that down for you in today's video. I'll give you the latest. And we'll definitely, hopefully try to reel in a big one here. Now, if you're new to the channel and you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and do so. Like the video and comment. Let me know where you're watching from. With that said, let's go ahead and jump on into things and start talking weather here. Now, looking at satellite loop here over the United States, overall, really it's just this little piece of energy right over the north central part of the country, specifically into the Midwest. That's bringing some snowfall currently to plenty of folks throughout the country, and I think is really going to add some festive vibes here through Michigan into the Northeast, and really kind of get in some last second snowfall here before Christmas. Now, other than that, things are actually relatively quiet through much of the lower 48, the Southeast, beautiful blue clear skies today. Same story for portions of the northern plains, and even all the way down into the Sunshine State and into the Lone Star State, seeing really nice weather here as we round out the final little stretch before Christmas. Now, taking a look at radar imagery, kind of overlaps pretty well here. Obviously, you'll notice the active weather with that storm system in the Midwest I just mentioned. So let's go ahead and zoom on into it and kind of take a look at who's seeing that snowfall here on the morning of the 23rd. Now, a good amount of snow, actually even into portions of Canada here, not far from London, Ontario, and into the Toronto area, seeing some pretty good snowfall out of this, but especially the UP of Michigan also picking up on a heavy dosing of snow from Saginaw all the way up to Traverse City, Alpena, Michigan, and then even into portions of the Upper Peninsula picking up on some good snowfall. And you'll notice even back into portions of Wisconsin, seeing some of that blue on radar this morning, indicating some of those festive flakes falling. Now, other than that, we do have a little bit of active weather into the Rockies here, into Idaho, Washington, and the state of Oregon. Rain for most folks, but some of those higher elevations definitely picking up on some snow in and around the Missoula, Montana area, back down not far from Idaho Falls, seeing some snow in those higher terrains. And that's also, once again, helping to kind of add to that Christmas vibe for many folks across the country. Now, whether you're seeing snow or not, it is quite cold in the eastern half of the country. I can tell you here in upstate South Carolina, waking up to the 20s, close to the teens, definitely making it feel like the holiday season. But those of you in the purple boxes here, those are winter weather advisories. That's where we could actually see some winter precipitation over the next day or so. And could even cause some travel impacts. In fact, look at this, Washington, D.C., kind of snow hole capital of the world, potentially with some wintry weather. Now, probably more likely to be ice, actually, unfortunately for D.C., so the snow hole kind of mantra there continues. But even up into Philadelphia, Baltimore, into northern Delaware here, winter weather advisories. Same story as we zoom out into other portions of the Northeast, upstate New York, the Adirondacks back down to the Catskills, and even into the higher terrains here of Vermont and New Hampshire. Dreaming of a white Christmas? Well, you'll probably see it this year as we get some of that last second snowfall. Now, other than that, really not a whole lot happening across the rest of the country. Like we've mentioned, a couple of winter storm warnings into the Sierra Nevadas, and then even winter weather advisories up into the Carson City area of Nevada. But again, overall, pretty lucky holiday travel outside of the couple of places we're about to talk about. And speaking of those places, let's go ahead and break it down. Let's get into the meteorology here behind it. And it's all due to this little pesky area of vorticity here in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. That's what's currently bringing our snow into the Midwest and will eventually work into the Northeast throughout the evening tonight and into tomorrow, and that's what could bring some good old-fashioned snow and ice to portions even of the I-95 corridor just in time for that holiday commute tomorrow morning on Christmas Eve. Now, watch this little piece of energy. You'll see it begin to dive towards the Northeast throughout the day. Today, beginning to kind of work through the area. And by the time we're waking up Christmas Eve morning, here we go. A nice little trough here. That's going to help to produce enough lift for some precipitation. And remember, it is cold up here, folks. So anything that falls likely going to be in the form of frozen precipitation, but that's not the only place I'm watching. Let me back this up just a little bit for you. Let me get into overnight tonight. And take a look down here towards the southeast, Georgia, Alabama, into the Carolinas, another little piece of energy that is kind of spinning up here. And as we get into Christmas Eve morning, this could produce precipitation over portions of the Carolinas, specifically the eastern Carolinas. And I'll tell you, folks, it's going to be cold down here too, so do not rule out a little bit of light icing during your Tuesday morning commute there. If you're going out to see grandma for Christmas Eve or whatever plans you might have, play it safe. If the temperature is at 32 or below, definitely be aware that anything that falls will likely freeze on contact to the surface and could become quite slippery. Now, it doesn't look like a huge deal right now, but it is quite often during kind of the final hour, if you will. These events uptrend a little bit. So definitely something we're going to want to watch in that part of the country. All right, let's time the whole thing out for you in the eastern half of the country. Blue is snow, green is rain, the pink and the kind of purple, that is ice. And this is this afternoon about 3 p.m. Eastern, noticing that snow continuing to stay steady here into portions of Michigan, even back into Wisconsin, and then back into portions of Ontario from Toronto, potentially even northward inland into Canada. And all of this is going to continue to work eastbound throughout the day today and getting into overnight and towards Christmas Eve. Check this out, as we're flipping the clock from midnight into 1 a.m. here Eastern time, pretty good little band of snow breaking out here from the Finger Lakes back down to Erie, up into Vermont, New Hampshire, into Maine, even potentially the Boston area could once again pick up on some flakes here as we're starting Christmas Eve morning for many folks. Now, it's this same time frame. Look down here, down towards South Carolina, North Carolina. See that precipitation getting very close to kind of some freezing temperatures. In fact, if I take a sounding here between kind of Charlotte and Fayetteville, yeah, a temperature of 35 degrees, a dew point of 22, that very likely would kind of hit that wet bulb, and we could see some freezing drizzle. A very real possibility here overnight tonight into tomorrow morning. Now, all this green that you're seeing from Ohio back into Kentucky, down towards the Ozarks, that's just good old-fashioned rain, so don't need to worry about any icing threat there or any sort of winter weather threat. But definitely, some rain there for your Christmas Eve morning. And then we get really into the morning, about the time everyone's waking up. And this is when things could get kind of interesting for DC, Baltimore, Philadelphia. Check out this. See this little thin band of snow beginning to set up shop? I mean, this is about as festive as it gets, folks. So you guys have really lucked out over the past week or so. We had that one snowstorm a couple of days ago that brought, a good amount of snow to DC, Philadelphia, especially up into Boston. Well, another band of snow, this time Christmas Eve morning. You really can't time it much better. And this could drop some quick accumulations. We'll talk about that next on exactly how much snow, but I would not be surprised to see a white ground for your Christmas Eve into Philadelphia, northern New Jersey, potentially even into Long Island, and then up the Hudson River Valley into portions of New York State, Connecticut, and then all the way up through the rest of New England. At the same time, still seeing this little storm system off the Carolina coast. Like I said, we'll watch that for some brief freezing rain. I would say most likely area is going to be this kind of triangle from Charlotte up to Raleigh, back down to Fayetteville. You kind of see that little area I have drawn on your map. That would be the most likely area to potentially see some ice accumulation here during your Christmas Eve morning time frame. Now we go through the rest of the day and things begin to clear out for most of us. This is Christmas Eve evening, about 4 p.m. If you have any fun plans, any Christmas parties or anything like that, I know personally I'll definitely be spending time with family and doing some festive activities, and looks pretty good for most of us. A little bit of rain left over into Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, down to Louisiana, and it's at the same time frame that we need to watch for some severe weather into Texas, and we'll talk about the setup a little more in depth here in a second, but right here into the Dallas-Fort Worth area, back down to Houston, and then over towards Austin. Going to need to watch for a couple rumbles of thunder and maybe a strong storm or two as we go into the overnight of Christmas Eve. Beginning to see those strong storms develop and likely staying that way during the evening as that low-level jet cranks up and instability rises through the region. But before we get there, let's talk snowfall totals, because like I said, I do think it's going to be notable for a good amount of folks. This is snow to come, and some of this has probably already fallen. In fact, I can guarantee some of this has already fallen by the time you're watching this, but notice a good amount of snow here, especially into northern Michigan. We could have nearly half a foot before all is said and done. So again, if you're already at an inch or two, that means probably maybe another 4 or 5 inches to come But either way, definitely good totals there. You'll notice, though, a sharp cutoff here. Once you get back down towards Detroit, dusting to an inch, but it's really the northern sections of the mitten here that are going to pick up on pretty good totals. Green Bay, too, probably a good inch or two of snow game there tonight for football. I think it's the Saints and Packers play. Luckily, or maybe not so luckily if you're watching the game on TV, snow will be over by kickoff, but definitely snow between now and then. Looking pretty likely. And then the Northeast, another area that's going to pick up on good snow. Check this out into the Tug Hill, maybe half a foot of snow. The mountains of Vermont, again, half a foot of snow, not out of the question. And then you get to the I-95 corridor, and not a lot of snow, but definitely notable. Boston back down towards New York City, northern Jersey, even into Philadelphia. A dusting upwards up to half an inch. Isolated spots maybe closer to an inch of snow. And all of this falling right on Christmas Eve morning as the sun is coming up. Really couldn't time it out much better. So definitely a bit of a festive kind of forecast here for a lot of folks. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. And trust me, many of us are quite envious of you getting in on some of that snowy action just in time for Christmas. All right, let's go ahead and talk about this severe weather threat a little bit, because I don't think it's just going to be Christmas Eve. I think it's going to be a bit of a marathon, not more of a sprint. Really the entire time period between, we'll say, tomorrow and about New Year's, we could run the threat of a couple strong to severe storms in this region. So go ahead and kind of watch it here. You'll see this big ridge building into kind of the eastern half of the country. And what that's going to do is really help to transport warm, moist Gulf air back into the lower 48. And while that's happening, we're going to likely see some troughing begin to get into the western half of the country. And all this is going to clash. And yeah, you know what that means. Severe weather potential into the southern plains, specifically Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana. I think these are going to be the four big states over the next couple of days that could run into some concerns out of this. And not a huge threat, not expecting a big outbreak or anything like that, but absolutely could lead to strong to severe storms for plenty of folks. And you can see the Storm Prediction Center already highlighting that with a marginal risk for tomorrow from Waco up to Dallas, back into Tyler, Longview, and then into Houston and back into the Austin area. Kind of, again, we talked about a triangle in North Carolina earlier. Well, here's the Texas triangle of kind of severe weather tomorrow. In fact, these interstates kind of make a perfect triangle anyway. So definitely, need to watch for that potential tomorrow. What kind of threat are we talking about? Well, there is not much of a tornado threat. You'll notice not a lot showing up here. Bigger threat is going to be strong wind in that area, and then potentially maybe a little bit of hail as well, but never rule out an isolated tornado. So go ahead, have your weather radio handy overnight tomorrow as we're getting into that Christmas Eve forecast and into even the morning of Christmas Day. All right, this map does a pretty good job of showing it as well. These are kind of all the ingredients for severe weather, and obviously the higher the colors, the more overlapping we're seeing of those ingredients, and the higher likelihood you could run into some strong to severe storms. And this is Christmas Eve, obviously noticing, a good 69% chance of those ingredients coming together for severe weather right into that area the Storm Prediction Center is monitoring. Well, like I said, going to be more of a marathon, not so much a sprint. We get into Christmas Day afternoon, and you notice not a lot, but maybe even some ingredients back down towards Louisiana. And then we get into the day after Christmas, another uptick in Texas. And then we get into Friday afternoon, more severe weather potentially, and all of that continues into the weekend before I think we get into next week and things once again calm down in the severe weather department. But then that's the start of the next bit of fun here as we're going to change the pattern up once again. Like I said, Christmas Day to New Year's Day, warming trend, severe weather increasing. But then you get to New Year's Day through at least the first week of January, probably longer than that. Then the pattern does a bit of a 180. So here it is, latest GFS ensembles. We'll get this into New Year's Eve. This is the morning of New Year's Eve, and you'll notice kind of some of this blue, again, working back into the eastern half of the country. That tells me cooler weather and likely stormier weather. And when I say stormier, I'm not talking about severe storms or tornadoes. I'm talking about potentially winter weather somewhere in this region. And I know that's a big old circle, but definitely something you're going to want to watch as we flip the calendar to 2025. And that only progresses even more by the time we get to about the 4th, the 5th of January. I think this is a time frame we really need to watch, folks. Strong ridging into Alaska, strong ridging up near Greenland, and this creates a perfect transport, a perfect highway, if you will, of cold air from the Arctic down into the eastern half of the country. and that combined with this troughing here could easily fire up a storm system somewhere favorable for big time winter weather, as the GFS ensembles here are kind of projecting a little bit. And it's not just the GFS, folks. Let me show you the European, arguably even more favorable. We'll start kind of at the same time frame here. Notice big areas of troughing as we get into January. And again, the same general idea, strong ridge up into Alaska here, strong ridge back towards Greenland, and that creates a beautiful transport or a perfect path here down into the lower 48 for that cold air to clash with this potential of maybe some sort of storm system developing. Now, obviously, this is a bit of a ways away. You know, we're not even at Christmas quite yet, so talking about 2025, you know, in the grand scheme of things isn't that far, but when we're talking about weather, it can be a bit of a task to kind of get a forecast from there to the near term. So let's go ahead and talk about it a little bit. This is the latest European model. Let's kind of talk about the Christmas time period. Excuse me. Here's Christmas Day. Here's a little storm system into the south. We'll move this further ahead into time. You'll notice this severe weather threat, round after round after round of storm system. Really, we'll say tomorrow through this weekend, and there's even another potent one. This one could potentially even bring severe weather into the mid-Atlantic by next Sunday as that rolls on through. And then it's after this that the pattern begins to change, and it's going to be a process. It's not going to be an overnight ordeal here, but we get into the 30th of December, and then we start cranking it towards the 31st. And notice this storm track beginning to ride further south here, and a pretty potent little storm here on the European in about 7 to 10 days. But more importantly, what this is going to do, besides potentially bring its own problems, is establish cold air. This is going to drag cold air out of Canada, and then that could set up the stage for whatever is behind it. You'll notice the European gets that through, a pretty little potent storm system, but still relatively warm, not a whole lot of snow with it. But then it drags our 540 line or our rain snow line very far south, even towards the Gulf Coast, and then begins to work that southern energy with it. And it showed a similar look yesterday, folks. And granted, this is, more than 10 days out, so don't take this as a forecast. We're using this for pattern recognition, meaning I'm not saying it's going to be a rain-snow mix into Charleston, South Carolina on the 5th of January, but what I am saying is we're likely to have a shot of cold air and an active storm track at that time frame. Give or take a couple days. But this storm track could be further this way, it could be further this way, it could be back this way. There's plenty of variables to figure out, but I'm getting excited, and I think many folks should as well, for at least the potential of a return to some wintry weather, at least cold weather. I think that is pretty well locked in, but probably even some snow during the first week or two of January. And again, a lot of folks still looking for their first significant snow of the year, especially in the mid-Atlantic and southeast, where it's obviously tougher to get snow, but not impossible by any means. All right, let me also show you the Euro AI model. This is a model that has done a terrific job so far ever since its inception over the past year. And we'll kind of look at it here. So I think this is the process. Now through New Year's Eve, like I said, going to be a warming trend, but right around the turn of the calendar is when we're going to get this storm to kind of cross the central part of the country. And this is the same storm I just showed you on the European in that 7 to 10 day time frame. Euro AI showing it pretty well here, and that pushes it east, and this could bring some snow. And I know this all looks green and you're thinking, all right, it's all right. Not quite. You see this kind of blue line here. Anything that is green that is overlapping with that blue, so for example right here, right into that area, that would likely be some sort of winter weather, and then everything else would be rain. But really what I just want you to focus on here is where we have the low pressure and where our 540 line is. And that's storm number one. And then after the fact, like I said, that kind of establishes cold air. And then we get more storms to kind of track with that 540 line. And check this out. This is a pretty favorable look on the Euro AI for some snow through the Ohio Valley and maybe even portions of the mid-Atlantic there into the first week or so of January. Now, I've said it before, I'll say it again, it's a ways away, but I am feeling confident at least that cold air will establish itself. This is Christmas through New Year's. Notice that big warming trend we talked about. Some cooler air definitely hanging on, maybe some cold air damming in the east, keep things a little closer to average. But for the rest of the country, big time warm up, especially into the plains here just after Christmas. And then we flip the calendar right here into New Year's. And notice what happens. The blue comes with it. And once again, those temperatures begin to crash on down. And by the time we get through the first week of January, the entire lower 48 just about is back into the blue as we see that 180 in the forecast. Now, final thing I'll show you, this is the European ensemble's total snowfall during a time period. So let me just show you now through about New Year's Eve. Notice basically from this point onward, all the snow we're going to see is out into the Rockies, and then the next day or so, we're going to see some snow into the Northeast and into the Great Lakes. But after that, folks, it's going to be pretty snowless for at least a good 4 or 5 days. But then we get into 2025 and notice the snow builds back in and even tries to work pretty far south on the ensembles here. So I think a lot of folks are still in play for some snow in January. I don't think there's anybody ruled out. In fact, I think there's a lot of people, at least during the first 2 weeks or so, that are very much in play for some sort of wintry weather as this pattern continues to look favorable, and the models have really honed into it. They haven't really bounced back and forth much, continuing to look quite good for winter weather into the start of 2025. Alrighty, folks, that's all I got for you on this Monday. Hopefully you have a great last little bit here before the Christmas holiday. Stay safe out there, enjoy it, try to spend some time with family, and I'll see you all next time.